This tweet from Interactive Polls. Breaking. NASDAQ falls to 2-year low on Monday, minus 1.84%. S&P lost 1.2. Look at this picture. I mean, there's some green in there. Okay. It's not as bad as that image of when Joe Biden was raising his fists and then people put the collapsing market behind them all in red as that meme. That was a good meme. But we're at a 2-year low now, and the stock market is dropped below the levels it was at before Biden became president. So I don't want to make this one political. I want to make this segment talking about the collapse of the economy more personal for individuals, and ask you, Drew, as we are watching an economic downturn. We're seeing inflation. We're seeing gas prices now go up. My question is, if this trajectory continues for whatever reason, be it the war or whatever, what happens to the average person's life? You as somebody who runs Fortitude Ranch, this recreation and survivalist community, you had to have done all the research in your middle of the class nuclear family. Economy hits. What does their life look like, and how bad can it get?
Well, a lot of people are calling for the recession, so there could be losses of jobs coming, although thus far that hasn't really happened, higher prices. But the thing that's really going to hurt people next year is food prices, not just because of normal inflation everywhere, but because of the lack of fertilizer, since they come largely from the Ukraine and Russia, and we're not getting those. And there's predictions of not just higher food prices, but in some parts of the world, you're going to have famine next year. Because food production is going to be way, way down. So
Sri Lanka,
food
right?
prices are going to go way up. And there have been other contributing factors, stupid government policies trying to stop fertilizer use in some ways for environmental reasons. But the world is facing a bad famine situation next year, assuming something worse doesn't happen, like Putin releasing a virus this year.
Or nuclear war or whatever. So the average family, somebody who... I assume the average person, they don't really pay attention. I was thinking, we were talking about the war stuff. I was like, why don't people care about this more? Why are there so many people that you try and talk about? I don't care about war. What's going on? Putin? I don't even know who that is. Ukraine, where is it? And then I'm sitting here, listening to Luke talk about the variety of things the U.S. is engaged in, what Russia's doing. And I'm thinking to myself, this is the kind of stuff that if you don't know about, one day it smacks you in the face. The war erupts, the food shortages, the food prices. For the people that have been paying attention and have done some degree of preparation, they're in a much better position. So with that in mind, let's say this escalates to hyperinflation. Let's say something bad happens. Let's say it's either a nuclear strike. Let's say it's a virus or something happens. The average person in the United States, what do you think their day is like when the grid gets hit, or when gases are gone, or what happens in the worst case scenario?
Well, it's bad news for them. I mean, government's top priority is protecting government, and that's official policy. It's called continuity of government. And any kind of disaster or collapse, your police protection will go down because, number one, the priority is to protect the elected officials, the mayors, the governors, everyone else. So police normally doing patrols in your neighborhood, some of them will be called back to increase protection and care for government officials. I mean, you're near Mount Weather here. I won't give out your exact location, but you're not far from Mount Weather. I drove by there about a month ago. I can't believe all the construction going on.
Really?
Mount Weather, huge construction.
Whoa.
And I've Googled
They're getting
and I
ready.
can't find why, but they've already got massive facilities and they're expanding them for government officials, but there's nothing done for civil defense is gone in the United States, and there's nothing being done. And the thing that makes me the maddest is there's not even the warnings. Government should be issuing warnings to people about situations like the coming food price jump that we're going to experience, the likelihood of famine because of the Russia-Ukraine situation. And it just doesn't happen. There's not care for us. It's all about, current issues and winning votes and, debates that relative to life and death are trivial.
All right. My favorite city in all this, New York City. What happens when the grid gets hit, when the food stops flowing?
It'll be. There used to be a saying in the preparedness industry, 48 hours to animal. In 48 hours, it'd take 48 hours for people to realize how bad it's getting, and then they'd turn into their animal instincts and they would kill to survive. I think it's more today, probably more like 48 seconds or 48 minutes to animal, because people are aware now that when the grid goes down, for example, again, you ought to watch Grid Down Power Up documentary. When the grid goes down, immediately there is no water system flowing. So people are going to start filling their bathtubs. Everyone does that. So within 5 minutes, municipal water is gone. There's no
5
fuel
minutes.
if everyone starts filling your bathtub and there's no pumping going on, the system shut down. So there's 3 days food supply in an average supermarket. That'll be gone in the first hour or two. People are going to run to the grocery store. They're either going to pay or more likely they'll just start looting. I think violence will start in the first hours. People stealing and potentially killing to survive, because they're going to figure out, hey, there's no way you can survive in New York City without an electric system, or there's a bad pandemic.
I disagree. We were there, like Luke, you were there during Sandy, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, the power was gone for like 2 weeks in Lower East Side. I think it was a couple days out in the Upper West Side where all the rich people were. Is that what it was, Luke? It was like 72 hours or something?
Yeah. Staten Island got hit really hard, and parts of Lower Manhattan got flooded, as well as some parts of Brooklyn. And it wasn't calamity. Wasn't too crazy.
I did a cleanup in
so
Staten Island. A dude's boat was on the street. It was nuts.
The issue was that they could still bring food in. There was still gas. There were still cars.
No, that's localized. I'm talking about a national loss of the electric system, and national pandemic that's all over the place.
So this is what I mean to say is, when people have faith, the government exists, aid is coming, they're chill. But if something happens where people, their confidence has to be rocked. So my view is, I don't know about the first hour. I think a lot of people, the smart people, maybe not even necessarily smart, but the more cutthroat, they're going to go out and they're going to get whatever they can as fast as they can. I think most people in New York are going to be looking around confused and just shrug. I got to tell you, man, I love telling that story of when I worked for Fusion and the fire alarm went off and everybody just sat around staring at it. As soon as the alarm went off, I got up and left the building. And then people only left the building when the fire department actually ran in with their gear. That's the average person. The grid's going to go down. They go, oh, the power is out. I got to tell you this. A second story. I was in working for Fusion, and I'm in New York, and the power goes out, and the alarms go on saying, everyone remain calm and remain in the building. And I was like, no thanks. And I left. I'm like, it was apparently there was a flood. There was a leak that hit something electrical and created a huge risk of fire. But they were like, no, everyone stay calm. Just keep doing your thing. I'm not sticking around for that. I think what's going to happen in cities like New York, something bad's really going to happen. And the average person doesn't read the news, doesn't watch the news, doesn't pay attention. And if they do, it's through really bad sources who are lying to them. And so they're going to sit there and they're going to be told, hey, everybody, the economy is going to be fine. Just stay home for the day. A day goes by, the food's gone, the water's gone, the economy's gone, their money's worthless. These people are going to lose it. Most of these people are probably going to the marauders are going to come for them. These people don't seem like the kind of people who are going to be able to survive. But some of these guys are going to just go around and become marauders.
Poor NPCs.
I don't know. There's a lot of obese people in the United States. I think they have a lot of extra fat that they're going to, of course, depend on. And they're probably going to TiVo American Gladiators or some sports balls, and then let their fat whittle away and start some fasting. That's not by their choice, but obviously it all depends on. There's a number of scenarios happening. I wanted to ask you, Drew, from all your work, especially with intelligence, what do you think is the most likely scenario and situation, especially after coming out of COVID, that could lead to the worst case scenario? What do you think is the most impactful, the most likely situation?
Well, at Forte Ranch, we actually track 50, we call them trigger events that could lead to a collapse. And the ones that we rate as, ignoring Ukraine right now in the current situation, but overall, we rank a pandemic, a really bad pandemic is the most likely event that's going to happen. And, we've had biologists warning us that we're actually overdue for a really bad pandemic. The influenza ones tend to come in cycles. We're kind of overdue for that. And it's so easy to do man-made, and it's so likely that a country like North Korea or Iran, we're the great Satan to Iran. And again, will the virus spread back to the country that releases it? Yes, but before I release the virus, I can develop vaccines clandestinely, so it won't hurt me when it comes back, or it won't hurt the people I care about in my country if I'm Iran or North Korea.
Hold on. I disagree, and I'll tell you why. Here's what I think would happen. Be it Iran, Russia, North Korea, China, or anybody,
some corporation.
They will release the virus in their own country first, but a weaker strain of it. It will have a low mortality, which will result in some death, but most of the people will just get sick and then get over it.
Stop giving them ideas,
Tim.
No,
this is not giving them an idea. This is what happened with Spanish flu. China, many people, I was reading about the history, like why didn't China get hit by this? In fact, they did before everyone else did.
Right.
A weaker strain, but a similar strain, swept across China. Many of them got very, very sick. When the Spanish flu then emerges, I think it was in the United States, but then it was seen in Europe with all the fighting. So that's how I believe how it got its name. When this starts spreading, It does make its way back to China, but they already had immunity to it from the weaker virus that had hit them. So I think what would actually happen is a smart country produces two versions, a very weak version and a very strong version. They give themselves the weak version first, then the strong version is released. So when it does come and hit them, mortality is minimal.
But the point is, this technology, this ability has never existed before in human history. It's out there now. There's all kinds of forms it could happen with. And, the experts use the word inevitable. We are going to have these kinds of pandemics. But back to your question, Luke, it's not just pandemics. The other really big one, likely one, is our fragile electric system because it's vulnerable in so many ways. We've been talking about, a nuclear EMP attack and North Korea's nuclear weapons. This is open source. This isn't classified information. The Russians helped them, actually Soviets before Russia, helped them design nuclear weapons that are designed for maximum EMP effect. They don't have to be accurate. They go off in our atmosphere, one or two, and the U.S. electric grid is toast at that point. There's cyber attack that could take down the grid. There's physical attacks, and they've been done. There was an attack out at a station in California, a very well carried out attack that destroyed the transformers there.
Is it cyber attack?
No, physical attack.
Wow.
There's a lot of solar flares, natural effects can take down our electric grid. That's why, again, you've got to watch this documentary, Grid Down, Power Up. There's so many ways our fragile electric system could go. And when I say go, it's gone for over a year or more. And most Americans will not be alive if it comes back up. We'll be dead.
I think we've been hit by cyber attacks
we have.
recently. And you just don't hear about it. There was one story. It was highly speculative. I know. I'm just saying, just a thought. It was around the time that Donald Trump was an airstrike was on its way to Iran. Trump calls it off and says no. Publicly, he says, I did not think that 500 people who would have died, the loss of life was worth what we would be retaliating for, or something to that effect. However, around the same time that the U.S. launches this fleet to go conduct an airstrike, a refinery in Philadelphia explodes. I asked some of my my hacker buddies, do you think there's what is the likelihood that in response to the U.S. engaging in a military operation, Iran conducted a cyber attack against a refinery, blowing it up, and we know they did it, so we backed off. He told me it was very, very low, not very likely, however possible, but just not at all likely. They all basically said no way, lottery tickets chance, but possible, sure, I guess. So my thing is, that was just one example of a scenario where I see this and I'm like, could it have been that the cyber attack blew up the petroleum refinery? So then Trump, seeing that vulnerability, cancels the attack, knowing it's going to lead to a greater escalation in cyber warfare? Maybe not. Again, I'll stress, my expert buddy said they don't think that was the case based on how it went down. But thinking about that, there have been many circumstances where we've seen various industrial facilities have fires start abruptly. And the answer is, sometimes fires start. Are we hyper-focused on this and now we're assuming it's going to be a cyber attack? Or are we in a normalcy bias that we cannot see that we are actually under attack when we are? How would we even know?
And then there's a lot more threats too. The threat of nanotechnology, some new technologies we keep coming out with. You were talking earlier about unintended consequences. A lot of people working with nanotechnology are concerned about that. Elon Musk is always talking about artificial intelligence, and I think the artificial intelligence threat is very much there, but not in the normal way you see in a movie where the computer becomes, thinking and evil. The bigger threat from artificial intelligence is some terrorist group or a nation, North Korea has tremendous cyber capability, actually programming and releasing a virus, instructing computers, maximize human death through the means you've got, that kind of a system of doing it. But there's many other sources that could lead to disaster beyond pandemics or our vulnerable electric system.
Zombies?
Other new technologies. Don't have those on our list of 50.
What's the over-under on zombies and Civil War?
Civil War is a big one, and so I was just going to mention one other thing. Ray Dalio is, either Nassim Taleb or Ray Dalio are probably the two smartest people alive I know of today. He's the founder of Bridgewater, the most successful hedge fund in history.
Yeah, we got to get Ray Dalio on the show. He'll be amazing on the show.
So he has estimated recently there's a 30% likelihood of war with China in the near future. That's his estimate. He's a China expert. And he's also said he sees a 30% chance of civil war after the next presidential presidential election. He says, these are not calculated numbers, back to your earlier question. These are guesstimates. But he's a very wise man. A hedge fund, makes its success based on trying to understand how the world is, how things are developing. So again, on trigger events, 30% chance of a war with China, that could be a nuclear war with nuclear strikes on the homeland. That leads to a collapse because our society is so fragile, so government dependent, and there's just a lot of bad people. And one other thing that I've never seen this anywhere in print or in the media, but a huge threat and vulnerability we face in the United States is the 1.5 million Americans in jail. 1.5 million Americans in jail. So when there's a pandemic, a 60% lethal pandemic, do you think guards are going to go to work and risk? They're not going to go to work. If the electric grid goes down, how do prisons work? I used to be a county commissioner. I've been in jails. Jails cannot function without electricity. That's how you control all the doors. It's all electric.
Will they open or will they stay locked?
They're probably going to come open. I mean, there's generator backup. Hospitals will claim, we've got generator backup. They've got backup for maybe 3 days at the most.
That's a good thing.
So you can have 1.5 million Americans, most of them aren't bad criminals, but a lot of them are, who are in jail, and they have absolutely no preparedness. They've got no house. They've got no food. So when they get out of their jails, either released or they just get out on their own, what are they going to do? They're going to maraud. It's the only way they're going to stay alive. They don't have a house. They don't have home and food and water. They've got to go out and steal from other people, probably kill them in the process to survive. No one ever talks about that. Our government is not getting us prepared for events that experts say are inevitable.
I disagree on the prison thing, though. Prisons would be one of the safest and most secure places to remain. So if you're there, you've got a bunch of guys. You've already got gangs. So if there's no more guards, there might be a lot of infighting. If that is the case, the end result is going to be someone who owns a fortress now. They may go and maraud, but they're going to use the prison as like a fortress base of operations and control it. And there's weapons in there. So they are instantly going to be armed, armored, and determined, and have facilities. And it's going to be look, I'll say it's worse than you're predicting. Prisoners will get out and go maraud. They're going to have a fortress base of operations with weapons. And then, they're going to go out and go on their patrols. And you probably, maybe you'll notice they're wearing prison clothes, but it's not going to matter. Guys with guns are going to come up and say, you work for us now. We control this massive fortification, so you can't even get to us if you wanted to. Thanks for checking out this segment from the Timcast IRL podcast. But if you want to check out the full show live, tune in Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. And if you want more special access content, head over to timcast.com and become a member. Your membership helps sustain this company, keep our journalists employed, makes this show happen, and you will get access to exclusive members-only segments of the Timcast IRL podcast, and there's a massive library to check out. So again, go to timcast.com or tune in Monday through Friday at 8 p.m., and we'll see you all there.